be here tonight for our planning commission meeting. We're grateful for the opportunity that we have to be a part of the planning for our city, and ask you to bless tonight as we discuss the items on our agenda, that we will know how to best plan for the future and meet the needs of the members of our community and those who are here. And see to bless us to be civil and kind and to strive to work together. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will make note that Commissioners Nancaro, Warner, and Webb are excused tonight. Meeting consideration. Consideration and action to approve the May 19th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Having reviewed those minutes, I move that we approve those.
I'll second.
Motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We don't have the links. Scott, do you put our agendas together?
It's Joyce now.
Oh.
I not have the.
Just on the opening meeting, they used to put a link to it so I could click on it and read it.
Would you like me to
Because I don't
summarize it?
know, but you did a good job last week. Would you like to summarize?
I'd like to summarize the opening meeting statement that was normally read here. So the Planning Commission is interested in hearing comments from everyone. We do have a level of decorum we'd like to keep as this is a public meeting. We ask that you direct your comments to the Planning Commission, not to one another, not to other members of the audience or city or staff. We ask that your comments be held to 3 minutes, unless you're the applicant, in which case you'll be given 5 minutes. If you need additional time for any of your comments, go ahead and ask for that, and that can be granted. To avoid repetition and redundancy, if you agree with the previous person that has given a comment, we ask that you simply state that rather than go through the whole repetition again. Of course, that is your prerogative. And we ask that you silence your cell phones in the public meeting to keep a level of decorum here. And am I forgetting anything? I think that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, item number 4, ex parte communications or conflicts of interest. Do we have any ex parte communications or conflicts on tonight's agenda? I'd just like to make note, I did have a conversation with Mr. Hanson on Montgomery's farm subdivision in the past couple of weeks, really just regarding some questions that somebody had asked about. I developed the ground to the south, and so they were just asking about ground conditions and that. So nothing that involves me as an owner or anything in this project. So, but we just did talk about it. So nothing that would constitute me to need to excuse myself on that item.
Mr. Thomas, I'm comfortable with you still participating in the discussion tonight.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to public comments. If you would like to make a comment to the Planning Commission on an item that is not on the agenda, please step up to the mic and do so at this time. If it is on one of the 3, I guess 4 agenda items, we will allow you to have some time to talk on one of those items. That's what you're here for. So if you're here for something not on the agenda, please step up to the mic, or if you're on Zoom, raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Nobody? All right, we'll move on to our first administrative item, item number 6, Subdivision Ordinance 2021-9. Consideration and action on an administrative application on a preliminary approval of the Montgomery Farm subdivision, 35 lots located at approximately 150 East, 2150 North. Presenter will be Scott Hess.
Thank you. And John, can you just go down through the staff report to you have the subdivision pull up and just take a look at So this is a 35 lot subdivision. Tonight's action would be preliminary plat approval. This would vest the subdivision to a large degree in the configuration that it's shown here. This is coming on the heels of an annexation request that came into the city with a land use designation of residential R18. That annexation, at the time of the staff report being written, was still being approved by the state. That is done now. We have the approval recorded for the bound annexation. And this was essentially the plan that came in with that annexation request. So you have 35 lots, residential R18. All of these lots meet the minimum required for the zone. There's a few little things to point out on here. One is that the setback boxes that are shown on here have 30 feet at the front and the rear. Those are 30 feet in the front, 20 feet in the rear. So there's a few small changes, corrections that have been asked the developer in the drawing that will come in between preliminary plat and final plat, but they're not substantive changes. I went out, I reviewed the site, I took some pictures and gave them to you. It's currently undeveloped agricultural land. There is one existing structure in lot 120, which is on the east side, south of Bound Lane, kind of between the right-hand road that's going up and in that cul-de-sac bowl. Structures like that are historic or standing typically need to be removed prior to final plat recordation. That'd be the recommendation from staff at this time on that one. And then just to the south of this subdivision, below that lot 122, there's a cul-de-sac bowl that comes from the subdivision to the south coming north. And we had talked with the applicant about whether or not to connect that road through to Bound Lane. They could have likely picked up the additional lot on the west side of the subdivision, but it would have created a very small block with four corner homes within one house of each other all the way around, and didn't really add a whole lot to street connectivity in the area.
Are you talking connected up to Washington?
No, it's not to Washington. We have a pointer.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little turnaround cul-de-sac bulb, and in the staff report, I indicate that there's going to be some offsite improvements, which are not typically common on subdivisions, but in this case, you have a former cul-de-sac bulb that was left open to connect onto the asphalt. That cul-de-sac will need to be rounded out and completed and finished as a full cul-de-sac on the south side of their property. It's actually outside of this piece. And a few other changes, or not changes, a few other things to point out. Immediately west of this, the 8 lots on the west side of this subdivision is Harrisville City. Their zoning is a little bit different. It's more like an R110 or R111. So those 8 lots on the west side are actually slightly larger than the R18. So that there's some visual consistency with the remainder of the subdivision going west. The majority of our improvements are going to be held on our side. There's a little bit of storm drain that kind of intermixes between the two cities, but engineering report is comfortable with the underlying civil improvements that are designed with the subdivision. So I don't have any other real substantive changes. There's a handful of conditions of approval that are pretty standard. They've got to meet all of their requirements for engineering letter, will serve letter. There's some requirements there for water shares that they'll need to provide. The 150 East is indicated on the city's trail plan, and we'll have a 6-foot wide sidewalk on one side of that subdivision, likely on the east side as it runs north-south through this subdivision. And then that runs up through the ranches and future multifamily project between 2550 and all the way down to about 1700. And that's all that, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question, and I haven't done my homework on this, but if we create that cul-de-sac there on the east end and don't connect it out to Washington, and are we creating a situation where we exceed our block length along Washington? So it's my understanding that we have a maximum distance of a half mile. We can go without having a block length. I don't like that ordinance, but we have it. So I'm concerned that if we stub that off as is proposed, and I actually like that design, but that we're in violation of the block length ordinance. Has that been looked at?
No, that wasn't brought up in the TRC meeting as far as I know. I wasn't in the first technical review committee meeting. I was in the second one. To the east of this is an outdoor storage lot that's part of the MP1 subdivision to the north. And on the other side of that storage lot is a private street off of 2175 that comes into the storage and then has a future commercial pad on the south side of it. So regarding the block length, technically on Washington, because of that private street, you do have a block break, but it's not a private, it's not a public street. It's more of a, like an asphalt access into that storage area. But, you know, they likely wouldn't lose a lot if you required them to go straight in. They might, in the short term, because that'd be a hammerhead stub or some sort of turnaround there that they could reclaim in the future if it were to connect through. But honestly, connecting this to Washington hadn't been brought up by the TRC.
Well, as stated, I don't like that ordinance, but it is what it is. It's there. And, you know, we've held other developers to that, where I didn't think it made sense. And I don't want to see, you know, every 150 feet have us having an intersection along Washington, but I'm of the opinion that would, I mean, that we at least need to look and measure and see if that creates a block length in excess of a half mile.
So just to clarify, it's a quarter mile, it's 1,320 feet.
Or whatever it is, whatever the standard is, I think it needs to be measured.
And
Well, but I think the issue here is they don't own the property that goes to Washington.
Correct, but would
and
we,
It's a developed, I mean, I guess it's a developed business already, so I would say that can't be connected.
well, we're kind of doubling down on that though, if we allow residential right there. Then, I mean, so now the prevention would be two developments, right? There'd be a subdivision and a private development there, right? I mean, we're only making the matter worse if we allow.
Well, that's gonna be a question. If we can't connect through because what's developed there already, how would you propose changing that so you could connect to Washington? I don't see where you can do it.
Well, like we do with other things that have to be just a stub road with a temporary turnaround,
Okay.
I would think. I mean, I don't love it either, guys. Like, I'm not saying this is what I want to see. I'm saying this because I feel like it's in our ordinance.
Yeah, that's similar. We have stubs all over the place that go into agriculture and it's just assumed that agricultural use would turn over. The lifespan of any commercial business is finite. And so at the time that turned over, we would connect that project
Isn't
through.
that,
So if you look at the side road, would you mark?
Well, that's-
So we
yeah,
have
that's-
some cul-de-sac like it is.
Yeah, there's a requirement there's a handful of ways you can do a turnaround. You can do a hammerhead turnaround or a modified cul-de-sac.
Can I open Deer Meadows Drive to Barker Park where they have a cul-de-sac, but it's stubbed? And eventually land at least it will be developed because they're going to do the same thing here.
Certainly could. You can make that recommendation. The road immediately west is at 250. I can't see it from here. Not 150, but the one on the east side is a former cul-de-sac that was a stub on the north. So that cul-de-sac bowl will still exist just as a wide spot in the road, and then it'll go straight up.
And this could be a moot point. We just don't know. We don't know the measurements, right? We could be sitting here and talking about this and it's already compliant, right?
well, you're talking about creating a block on Washington Boulevard, right?
On the west side of Washington.
Yeah. So I guess I'm of the opinion that the block length would be 2275 down to, I think, 2000. But there's 2 or 3 streets off to the east side of Washington that shorten that. There wouldn't be any one block that long. I don't think it has to be a 4-way intersection to classify as a block. So,
That is certainly one way of looking at that.
it's the right way. So I don't think that, you know, putting a through street into Washington would be that. I mean, being that there's business there already and a power substation. But
What it is, what it is.
That was my question. If that measurement had been made and it hasn't, so, thank you.
So staff's recommendation on this is to approve the preliminary plat as drawn. It would likely be followed pretty quickly by a final plat, and that could be amended from the preliminary. But that's all staff has. I welcome any other questions or presentation from the applicant.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Where's that 6-foot wide trail going to connect to?
That's on our trails plan, and depending on the age of the development, some sections of 150 have a 6-foot sidewalk and some don't. So we've been picking it up with each new development as we've gone along. So right now it'll connect on the south to an existing sidewalk and then to the north to the Ranches project with, I believe there's a 6-foot sidewalk on that section too. That's been a
Yeah,
consistent
that
request.
field to the right that you see on the map here that's just blank, Scott,
Right,
that's that ranches development that we've approved.
okay,
So I guess the ranches is on the map. It's the Patriot Point, right? The west side of the ranches where it connects, and 150 continues up. And it goes to where the non-recreational pond was debated.
right.
So
That makes sense.
that's where the trail would continue through, is that development. Okay, the applicant like to address us? You don't have to. You were talking about giving a speech earlier, though.
Brought my hearing aid with me. John Hanson, 1165 West, 4000 North in Pleasant View. As most of the projects I do, I'm really excited about this one. I think the homes are going to be moderately priced in here. Hopefully under the $500,000 level, which I can hardly say for buyers. I think this will be a great subdivision. Like you say, we'll have a trail system up to our new pond. And I think there'll be a lot of interaction here between the two neighborhoods to the south and to the north. And so I don't know what else. Brandon had the question. We looked to see if we wanted to extend that road, and then planning and engineering didn't think that, it made sense. And the length of a block, I think, is 1,320 feet. I think we've addressed that, but thank you. That's all. I hope that, any questions from planning?
Any questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Oh, you do have a
John.
question, Johnny?
John, I still have lingering concerns about not the block length interior to the subdivision, but about the block length of Washington. And it doesn't even abut your property, and it's hard to even hold you to that. But if the planning commission were to feel it was prudent, would you be willing to put a temporary turnaround at the end there instead of the subdivision?
You mean off this 250?
Or is that 250?
Well,
Instead of the cul-de-sac, I just don't know any other way. So my concern is it's just an initial concern I have at this point, right? Is that we're going to be non-compliant with the block length along Washington Boulevard, not interior to your property. So the only solution I can see for that is to not have a cul-de-sac on the west side or the east side of your property.
Of Bound Lane. So it'd be the cul-de-sac on Bound Lane would turn into a stub. So that you would-
Yeah, I mean, you're right up against Dan Nixon storage units, and it doesn't make sense to me that we stub a road into already commercial developed property.
Mhm. Well, I agree with you. It doesn't mean,
It's another road that goes nowhere and it'll never go anywhere. And the elevation is so great there, that really takes up to Dan's property. So I would prefer if the planning commission would just let us put the cul-de-sac there. And there's a very unsightly home out in front, that brick one. I don't know if you guys know where that is. The same seller who owns this owns that. It's by the power station there. And I've been asked by some residents, even in this city, to see if we can't get rid of that old building there on Washington. So,
Are you agreeing to a term of approval?
what's that?
Are you agreeing to have that removed as part of your approval?
No, it's only taken 5 years to work with this guy to get this far.
Yeah,
But anyway, I am sensitive to Washington, and I would prefer just to leave it as it is, the cul-de-sac.
Okay, for the record, I would too. I just don't know if it's within our purview for that. So I'll wrestle with that here tonight and let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Before we have our planning commission discussion, is there any members of the public here that would like to speak on this item? Anybody on Zoom? All right. Planning commissioners, discussion, recommendation.
My gut tells me to table this for a couple of reasons, to make that measurement and then figure out
So
what the definition of a block length is, right? Because Eric, your point is that, hey, we have that block length satisfied on the west side of Washington. So can we ignore it on the east side? And I don't know the answer to that.
well, my more pressing issue is they don't own or have the ability to connect to Washington Boulevard. So we're saying that they have to extend a street through other people's, not through, but one day if the people who have developed that ground decide to do something different, then the ability to connect a road.
Right.
If it was undeveloped ground differently, but I don't know what the ordinance that you're referring to is trying to be able to maintain proper block lengths. But I look at that as in the ability to connect, this going through 2 or 3 different parcels of ground before it gets to Washington. Is that fall under that to say, oh, well, that needs to connect? I don't.
So if it was undeveloped ground, you would likely enforce a temporary turnaround. It's just a stubbed road with a temporary turnaround.
Well, I think that would probably be more of staff and what engineering has looked at as saying, we're running the road into developed property, so you don't create the stub street into developed property already. Versus if it was undeveloped, you don't know what's going to happen with it or when. But right now, as developed property, that would have to then go away, be